Breaking news, breaking news. The grace of God discovered to be actually of God. We interrupt this study on Acts chapter 7 to bring you breaking news. The grace of God is actually discovered to be of God. Okay? Notes on the grace of God. Grace. The Greek word is charis, which is joy. From page 132 of the keyword concordance in the Concordant Literal New Testament, you got to get over there and order yourself a Concordant Literal New Testament because it has a wonderful concordance at the back of it. And it has every word listed in the Greek New Testament and where you can find it and what it might mean. You can do it research for yourself. Anyway, from page 132, charis, joy, grace, an act producing happiness, a benefit, sometimes better rendered favor, thanks as an acknowledgement, grateful, and so forth. Anyway, so my big point in putting this thing in a red box here is just so you can see the Greek word is charis, and this is just the beginning. This box here is just the beginning of the listings of you'll find the word grace in the New Testament on page 132 of the keyword concordance. Okay? Now here's the points I want to go over about this business that grace is actually of God. The grace of God is of God. Point number one. I contend that we know very little about the grace of God, and it's why Paul opens almost every one of his letters with grace to you. And we know so little about the grace of God that the Charismatics, the Pentecostals, the Catholics, and the Free Will Baptists never say grace to you. It's not a greeting. It's not a phrase. It's not a saying in their vocabulary. It's right there in their Bible, but they don't use that phrase, grace to you, because I believe they kind of hate it and what it means. Anyway, by and large, the phrase grace, means favor given to somebody who doesn't deserve the favor. In fact, he may deserve the opposite of favor, but he's still given the favor. Okay, so point number 2. Salvation by grace actually would mean universal salvation. Because if grace is the favor given to somebody who doesn't deserve it, then nobody deserves grace. And if God is no respecter of persons, and he doesn't hold anybody, if he doesn't give them favors because they earn it, then he would have to give everyone the same grace. All right, now here's where it's going to get cool. Years ago, I was somewhat involved with the Witness Lee cult. They call it the Lord's Recovery Movement. They call it the local church. And the head of it all is this guy who died recently named Witness Lee. And somehow they discovered that the Greek word for grace is joy. So they enhanced on it and called it the enjoyment of God. And there was something stupid about their enjoyment of God. And here's what it was. Point number 4. They were solipsistic, soulish Christians in that church to a great degree. What does solipsistic mean? It means, the belief that only you exist. And so when they looked at this word grace, or they actually transposed the word enjoyment on top of the word grace, it was still all about us. Us. We are enjoying the grace of God, and you're not enjoying the grace of God. We're special. You're not special. Us. But what if this phrase, the grace of God, is all about God? What if it's not about us? What if it's about God, the grace of God? Point number 6, the grace of God with an emphasis on the phrase of God. So if it means joy, then this grace of God would be the joy that God is in possession of. something that is bringing joy to God. All right? The charis, the joy of God. Now here's my example for my running thought. Number 7. The prodigal son comes home. He knocks on the door. And God says, ha, with a belly laugh, ha ha ha, why of course you're home. I knew you'd come home all along. I'm so happy to have you back. That's the grace of God, the joy of God. He's so happy that when we knock on the door to come home, because he knew we were going to knock on the door the whole time. That's the grace of God. Favor given to this prodigal son who doesn't deserve any favor. But God has this grace, this joy over welcoming him back. Okay? Item number 8. The grace of God is the joy of God. Number 9. Recipients of grace truly would be rather humbled because we didn't deserve any favor of God. We're just recipients. We can't brag. We can't brag at all. We didn't do anything to earn it. We're just recipients. Like the prodigal son, he doesn't have anything to be proud of. But his father welcomes him home indeed. Number 10, if you don't need grace, you can be proud, right? If you don't need the grace, then you can be proud, right? This is the free willers' attitude. All these free will people, they're so proud of themselves. They don't need grace because they did actually earn God's favor with their correct behavior. Number 11, God does make sure that we all need grace. You see, he locks up all together in stubbornness. Romans 11:32. Even the free will people are locked up in stubbornness. They can't hip it. If they're locked up in stubbornness and believing that they have a free will. Meanwhile, they're so predictable. And if you have a free will, I don't think you'd be predictable, but they are rather predictable. And my point number 12, that mercy is not exactly the same thing as grace. And here's my thought there, that mercy is kind of like detached, is not as emotional as the joy of God. You see, if a conquering king has mercy on his enemy, it's not like he has joy about showing them mercy. It's some type of practical matter. And good thing I'm suggesting that grace is much more of a term you'll find in the New Testament than mercy. Much more. You'll find more grace mentioned than you will mercy. And so when you see the word mercy and the word grace, you'll know maybe they have something to do with each other, but I'm suggesting that the word grace has more emotion in it. The joy of God is one thing. The grace of God, the joy of God. The mercy of God is something else, It's not as heartfelt, more practical. Just thinking out loud here. Number 13. Mercy is a more practical design. Grace is something with more emotion and more feeling. And if you want to see the keyword concordance online, here's a link to it. And I hope you got a little something out of this. The big thought here is that the prodigal son knocks on the door, and the father has a belly laugh and says, "Come on in, son." That is the grace of God. It doesn't even bring up any hard feelings. It is the favor of God shown to those who deserve the opposite. And we're saved out of grace, out of God's gracious nature. And grace is charis. Charis is joy. All right. That's enough for now. Thanks for listening, and grace to you. Leave a comment and share this with somebody. They might get a kick out of it. Amen.